You guys know I love Brazilian butt lifts.
So much.
Yeah. So have you guys heard of the Face Brazilian butt lift?
No, but I'm suspecting it's putting fat in your face.
It is, Sarah. You are so right. Yes, Face BBL.
Is it your butt fat into your face?
No, not necessarily.
That'd be funny.
So I saw an article that popped up about Face BBL, and I was like, I mean, just like Sarah, I was like, I know what this is going to be. Though, did I clip the article, Trey? I can't remember. Yeah, here it is. USA Today. People are paying thousands for Face BBLs. Not to be confused with broadband light, which is a phototherapy IPL, which actually is pretty good for your face. They're talking about Brazilian butt lifts. So there is a plastic surgeon, Benjamin Collin from Chicago, that has trademarked the name Face BBL, which is I don't know, in my opinion, a questionable marketing tactic.
Yeah.
All a Face BBL is, as Sarah said, is fat grafting to the face. Look how smart you are, man. That's just like crushingly good. I'm proud of you. But yeah, so basically this guy is trying to, be unique and trademark some fancy name for a procedure that's been around for 20 or 30 years.
Is it normal to put fat in your face?
Yeah, so it's not unusual. I think they said that in the world there's a few 100,000 of these done a year, like worldwide. It's not as popular as a lot of things.
Like getting filler?
Yeah, filler's way more popular.
Why would you get that over filler?
That's a great question, Sarah, and one I actually didn't write on my thing. So, so if you're going to restore volume, you could use an artificial filler or you can use fat. Mm-hmm. So the obvious advantage of doing fat grafting, there would be two. And I'm not a big fan of this, and I'll tell you why. But the two advantages to facial fat grafting would be, one, when it's all said and done and everything settles, whatever you have is permanent, versus fillers are not.
Okay.
You can get a year out of fillers, a year and a half, sometimes even 2 years, but eventually that filler is going to break down. And if you want to continue that look, you're going to have to do the filler again. With fat grafting, if you got the result that you want, it's permanent. Also, if you got the result you don't want, it's permanent. So, there's that. But then the other thing too is when you're doing fat grafting, you're harvesting fat from somewhere.
Yeah.
So you're kind of getting two surgeries at once, right? You're maybe losing some love handles or whatever it is you have that you don't want, and then you're getting that fat grafting to improve the contour. So for those who don't know about fat grafting is just harvesting fat from one area, processing it to kind of spin it, purify it, cleanse it, and then re-injecting it back into your body where hopefully your body will absorb that fat. Not absorb it, but it'll hang on to it and give it a blood supply, and then that fat will stay there. So as I kind of alluded to, I'm not a big fan of facial fat grafting. I've done fat grafting in various areas over the body. Most notably breast is probably the most common place that I've done fat grafting.
Yeah.
I don't like facial fat grafting for a few reasons. When you talk to people who do a lot of these, they'll often claim that the complication rate from facial fat grafting is very, very low. They'll say like 2% or 3%. I think that's kind of underreported. I don't think that that's accurate. And also, I don't think that the things that I would consider a complication are even included in the list of complications. So I did pull a study from the Journal of Clinical Medicine 2022. Throw it up there, Trey, if anybody wants to look at it. So this basically is a review of about 100 research papers on facial fat grafting. Interestingly enough, 100 papers only had 5,000 patients, which tells you that this is not something that's done in insane amounts. Mm-hmm. The complication rate was stated to be from 0 to 80%, depending on the paper, but the average overall complication rate was 8%, which is not bad when you think about other surgeries. 8% is not a terrible complication rate.
No.
It's a little high for my taste, but still not bad. Unfortunately, 25% of that 8% or 2% of the patients had an intravascular injection of fat. When we talk about Brazilian butt lift and the very high mortality rate that comes from that, it is because of fat getting injected into your blood vessels.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that number 2% would be lower for facial fat grafting because the blood vessels are just smaller. and it's harder for the fat to get into them. To me, 2% is pretty high. I mean, that means 1 in 50 patients in those studies had a
like a
potentially
blood clot.
life-threatening problem. Yeah, I mean, that's not everyone that gets a fat embolism dies, but it is very, very risky. And to me,
Yeah.
like a 2% risk of a very serious complication is legit. But then my other issue with this study is, to me, 2 of the most common, I don't want to say complications, but maybe side effects is a better word, weren't even really included in that. You know, and I always talk about this when we talk about Brazilian butt lift. Like, there's the risk of the death, which is obviously bad, which is much lower with the face, I think, but still there. But the 2 big things I don't like about fat grafting in general is the fat reabsorption is always an issue.
Yeah.
I pulled up a study about facial fat grafting, and it said the amount of fat that you inject gets reabsorbed at a rate of 20 to 90%. Yeah, it's an enormous number.
It's a very big gap,
It's
too.
a huge gap. And probably the huge gap is based on the fact that the amount of reabsorption varies depending on technique. You know, I've talked to colleagues who tell me how they do fat grafting. I'm like, I mean, I don't say it to them because I'm not looking to start beef or whatever, but I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, there's no way that fat's going to survive. You know, you didn't do enough to process it, to prep it. I do think that if you do it very well, you can get maybe as little as 20 or 25% reabsorption. But there's a huge range there, and it's on your face, and it's not always equal. I mean, what if you get 75% reabsorption in one cheek and 25% in the other?
Oof.
Like, you're going to have this asymmetry. And I have this conversation with my patients that want fat grafting for their breasts that, hey, there's some variability in this, and you have to know that, and you have to be kind of, you know, willing to accept that there might be some asymmetries when it's all said and done, or it may not take as much. And for the breast, especially for things like reconstruction, I'm okay with that. But on your face, I mean, that's just risky to me.
Yeah.
You know, having
That's
that
scary.
well, just having that much risk of somebody's face not being what you'd expect is just a risk I'm not willing to take. And then the other one they don't really talk about is scarring in the fat. You know, sometimes you'll inject the fat and it doesn't get reabsorbed, but it causes a reaction and then it becomes hard. I mean, who wants like hard sausages like inside their face? You know, I mean, it just sounds bad. Doesn't Trey hard sausages in the face? No.
Big pause. Pause.
You want some hard sausage in your face?
This is a family show, sir.
No, like when you inject the fat, and you inject it, and it's like a little sausage of
No, I'm
fat.
joking. I
Yeah,
get
right?
you, yeah.
I know, but
So if it's scarred, it's like a hard
it's just
sausage.
the wording of it.
I know, I said that, and I was like, oh, Sarah's about to giggle. But anyway, nobody wants the hard sausages or the hard fat links in their face. Nobody wants that. And it can happen. You know, I've done some reconstruction fat grafting where people come back and they're like, yeah, it feels hard here. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of one of the things, like massage it, and a lot of times it breaks down. But I just am very, Trey's still laughing.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
We're immature, all
I
right?
know, yeah.
We are the new adults.
Please
We're
disregard.
millennials.
Please
We can't help
disregard
it.
our silliness. Yeah. Yeah, for me, especially if you're working on the face, I like predictability. I don't like uncertainty, and facial fat grafting carries that. And I don't care who you are. I mean, I do think that people who are very good at it are going to have less chance of that variability, but to me, it's never going to be zero. And if you get someone's face where they get a unequal reabsorption or they get the sausage thing going on, they're just not going to be happy. Don't laugh, Sarah.
I'm trying to.
And so I'm not a big fan of facial fat grafting. I don't think that it's as offensive to me as Brazilian butt lifts, where you have that really high mortality rate. But
Well, I guess it's like, you said it's like the blood vessels are smaller.
yeah, they're smaller. Yeah.
And then also you're probably not injecting as much fat
Correct.
into your
Yeah,
face.
you're exactly right. I think the
So-
average amount of fat injected in the studies I was looking at was like 30 cc's per side. It's not a lot.
Like
in a
how much
butt,
is
you're
that?
injecting like, well, I mean, so for comparison, a butt injection would be like 500, 700, 800. You know, in the
Gosh.
face, you're like 30 or 40.
Yeah, so people, so it's
enormous.
like,
It's an enormous
it's
difference.
safer.
Yeah, it's safer. No, it is. It is safer. Yeah. So Facial BBL. Yeah, that's just marketing. I mean,
Yeah, I think
don't-
people think it's like, oh, you're just gonna like pull a little fat from
Yeah.
here and then put it right here, so they think it's no big deal. But
on the one hand, I have to like kind of applaud these guys like this doctor who come up with some unique name for something that totally exists.
Yeah.
And to get, I mean, this guy makes up this word and he's got an article in USA Today. I mean, hats off to you, but also I'm like, bro, you're just like making up a new name for something that's
maybe
been around
he's just
forever.
really good at it. Maybe he's really good at grafting.
Maybe. I mean,
That's his like specialty.
it could
maybe.
be. It might be. Maybe he's like a facial grafting expert and he deserves to make up a new name. I
Maybe.
see that stuff and I'm like, oh my gosh, eye roll.
You have to make up your own now.
I have to make my own thing up. What would I make up? I will think of something. That's what I'm gonna do. Is next week when I come, I'm gonna have a really elaborate name for something that's been around forever, and I'm gonna trademark it.
You should.
And then I'm gonna be in USA Today.
And then you have to
I think I've
put
been in USA
quotes
Today.
around it.
Yeah, quotes.
Put the little R, the circle around
Yeah,
it.
right. Trademark.